I'll pay for him." The obese girl cried, her voice breaking through the cruel laughter in the crowded supermarket like a fragile glass shattering on cold tile. In that single trembling moment, time seemed to freeze. Heads turned, smirks faded, and a single father standing in the checkout line felt something shift inside his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet heroes who walk among us every day, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to be heard. The fluorescent lights of the small-town grocery store in Millbrook buzzed softly overhead. It was late evening, the kind of hour when exhaustion weighed heavier than the grocery bags people carried. Daniel Harper stood in line with his 6-year-old son, Noah. Daniel was 34. But the last 5 years had carved deep lines into his face. His wife had died in a car accident on a rainy night, leaving him alone with a toddler and a mountain of hospital bills. Since then, Daniel worked double shifts as a mechanic at a run-down auto shop just outside town. His hands were always stained with oil. His back constantly ached, but none of it compared to the silent fear that stalked him every night. The fear of not being enough. Noah clutched a small box of cereal shaped like stars, his eyes hopeful but cautious. Daniel had already calculated every item in the cart 3 times in his head: bread, milk, eggs, rice, a pack of discounted chicken thighs. He had exactly $43.60 in his worn leather wallet, not a penny more. When the cashier scanned the items, the total flashed on the screen: $51.18. Daniel's stomach dropped. He quietly asked the cashier to remove the cereal first. Noah's small hand tightened around the box, but he said nothing. He had learned too early how to stay silent. Then Daniel asked her to remove the chicken. The people in line began shifting impatiently. A man in a business suit sighed loudly. A teenage couple snickered under their breath. Daniel felt heat crawl up his neck. He hated this part, the part where poverty became public. That was when the girl stepped forward. She had been standing 2 places behind him. 17, maybe 18 years old. Her body was heavy, her cheeks flushed pink, her dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail. She wore an oversized hoodie and leggings, and her sneakers looked worn at the edges. Some of the same teenagers who had been laughing at Daniel had mocked her just minutes earlier for the candy bars and ice cream in her cart. But now she stepped closer, clutching her wallet with trembling fingers. "I'll pay for him," she said, tears gathering in her eyes. The store fell silent. Daniel turned, confused. Their eyes met for a brief second. There was something raw and familiar in her expression, the look of someone who knew what it felt like to be judged before being understood. The cashier hesitated, glancing between them. Daniel shook his head immediately. Pride surged like a shield. "That's not necessary," he muttered, his voice tight. But the girl's tears spilled over. She spoke louder this time, her voice cracking. "Please, I know what it's like." Her words hung in the air. The man in the suit rolled his eyes. Someone whispered something cruel about charity cases, but the girl didn't back down. Danielle saw then that her hands were shaking. This wasn't pity. This wasn't for show. This was personal. Something inside him, that rigid wall he had built around his dignity, began to soften. The cashier quietly added the removed items back to the total. The girl handed over her card. Daniel watched, stunned, as the receipt printed. He felt gratitude, humiliation, and something deeper, a painful recognition of shared struggle. Outside the store, under the dim yellow glow of the parking lot lights, Daniel caught up to her. Noah skipped ahead, hugging his cereal box tightly to his chest. He asked her why she had done it. She wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of her hoodie and told him that her name was Lily, that her mother worked 3 jobs, that she herself had been bullied her whole life for her weight, that just last year, when her mom couldn't afford groceries, a stranger had paid for them. She said she had promised herself that one day, she would do the same for someone else. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He thanked her, but the words felt too small. Lily shrugged, trying to act casual, but her eyes were still glossy. She said she knew what it felt like to have everyone watching while you silently fell apart. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay on his thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling of his small apartment. He kept seeing Lily's tear-filled eyes, kept hearing her voice. I know what it's like. He thought about pride, about how it had kept him isolated, about how often he had refused help even when drowning. The next morning at the auto shop, Daniel asked his boss for something he had never dared to request before: extra responsibility. Not more hours, responsibility. He proposed starting a weekend program offering free basic car inspections for single parents and struggling families in town. In exchange, he would take a small commission from any larger repairs that came from those inspections. His boss laughed at first, but Daniel didn't back down. By the end of the week, a small handwritten sign hung in the shop window: free car checkups for single parents, Saturdays only. The first Saturday, only 2 people showed up. By the third week, there was a line down the block. Word spread quickly in a town like Millbrook. Daniel worked tirelessly, checking brakes, changing oil, fixing minor issues without charging a cent. He saw exhausted mothers, elderly men raising grandchildren, widows, fathers like him, and something began to change inside him. Helping didn't make him weaker. It made him feel strong in a way overtime pain never had. One afternoon, about 2 months later, Lily walked into the shop. Daniel almost didn't recognize her at first. She still wore oversized clothes, but there was something different in her posture: less shrinking, more standing. Her mother's old sedan had been making a strange noise. Daniel checked it for free. It was a minor issue: a loose belt. He fixed it in 15 minutes. When he handed her the keys, he also handed her an envelope. Inside was a voucher for a full scholarship Daniel had quietly arranged with the local community college. Over the past weeks, he had spoken to several customers, including a retired professor who owed him a favor. Lily had mentioned once, in passing, that she wanted to study nutrition, not to lose weight, but to understand it, to help others who struggled like she did. Daniel had remembered. Lily stared at the voucher, confusion turning into shock. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time, they were different. He told her that kindness was never a one-time transaction. It was a ripple, and she had started one. She tried to refuse at first, just like he had in the grocery store, but Daniel gently insisted. You reminded me who I wanted to be, he said quietly. Over the next year, Lily enrolled in classes. She began volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring kids who faced bullying. She didn't transform into a movie-perfect version of herself. She didn't suddenly lose weight or become someone else. She simply became confident, and that confidence was radiant. Daniel's small program at the auto shop grew into a town-supported initiative. Local businesses joined in. The grocery store started a discreet fund for families in need. The man in the business suit, who had once sighed impatiently, donated anonymously after his own company downsized and he found himself unexpectedly struggling. Millbrook changed. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. It all traced back to one trembling voice in a checkout line. Years later, at Lily's graduation ceremony, Daniel sat in the audience beside Noah, who was now taller and brighter-eyed. When Lily walked across the stage to receive her degree in community health and nutrition, the applause was thunderous. She searched the crowd until her eyes found Daniel. She smiled, and he felt that same shift in his chest. Only now it wasn't fragile, it was full. Before we close, if this story touched your heart in any way, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep stories of hope and humanity alive. And here's something special: comment the word kindness below if you believe one small act can change someone's entire life. Because sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the one who looks powerful. Sometimes it's the one brave enough to say, through tears and trembling hands, I'll pay for him. And sometimes, the most shocking thing a broken single father can do next to broken bar is choose to believe in the world again.